The New York Rangers draft and offseason plans may have just been revealed, as GM Chris Drury is not going to be afraid to make a big splash and big moves, and that includes moving off of a former second overall pick that he just signed. We're going to break all of that down, but before we do, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 80% of you watching our videos on the channel are not actually subscribed to the channel, so if you want to do yourself a favor, some monumental things are coming up here in the next week or so. We got the draft, we got free agency. It's going to be a big one for the New York Rangers, so stay tuned for that. Hit that subscribe button, do yourself a favor, and let's get right into the video today. A couple shocking reports have come out and some rumors that the New York Rangers might be wanting to move off from Kaapo Kakko. And just last week, I was making a couple videos, and 2 weeks ago when they signed him to that contract extension, where it looked like the Rangers actually wanted to hang on to this player and see what they had in this player. But plans in the NHL, of course, shift very drastically, and some pretty interesting things came out. So we'll get right into it. This is from Phil, of course, who's been really good on Twitter. If you don't follow him on Twitter, you should give him a follow because he's been great with a lot of this stuff. So this is from the article, also a great article, so if you want to go check that out. This is sort of a sell low scenario, but sources report that Drury is also attempting to use Kakko in conjunction with the club's own 30th overall selection to move up in the first round. And now, while this is a very interesting prospect of a move, and I think it is a little bit creative because, again, you're going to get out from Kaapo's cap hit, which isn't that, significant at all, really. And I do think that you could still see what you have with this player, but at the same time, Drury has to think about, the cup window, right? The Rangers kind of have to win in the next year, really. I mean, after that, you got contract extensions kicking in for Shesterkin. It might get a little bit ugly, but so you have to look at next year, really. So interesting prospect, packaging him with the first round pick. But then I asked myself this once I read this, and I don't know how Rangers fans feel about this, and I'll leave it on screen so you can just kind of digest it, and I don't know how the rest of the fan base thinks about it. But what was the point of not trading the first round pick at the trade deadline to bolster your team this year and try and win? Because you wanted to keep it for the draft, because obviously the Rangers owner, he wants to be at the Sphere because he has ownership in that as well. That's a whole story. If you want to read about that, go Google that. But what was the point then of keeping the first round pick if you're going to trade it with Kakko anyway, whether it be at the draft or right before the draft, right? Or around that area? What was the point? If you're not going to use that draft pick now and you want to package it with Kaapo, what was the point of hanging on to it and not going for a big fish at the deadline this year? That is a little puzzling to me. That's a little almost upsetting because, a lot of Rangers fans were thinking, go for the big fish, use the first round pick. We don't need it. We're in a cup window right now. And now, you hold on to it because you want to make a selection at the Sphere in Las Vegas, and you might move off of it anyway to get rid of Kaapo Kakko and maybe get a, really good piece in return that could help the Rangers. But very interesting prospect. And of course, that's hindsight 2020, right? So we're looking at it at this point now. Obviously, the deadline is gone. The Rangers have been eliminated. And but it's very interesting, right? You could really help your team with a move like this because there's a team out there who could be willing to take Kaapo Kakko on, right? And see what they have in him, maybe a younger team that's up and rebuilding. So very, very interesting prospect there. And then if you go a little bit further, I do think Kakko has already been discussed in trade talks, so he's probably already on the block, right? It seems like Drury already has him on the block, which was, very interesting, honestly. Like just a week ago, we were talking about how Drury, and Laviolette wanted to see this player come back to see what they have in him, to kind of work with him. And now it seems kind of like he's out the door already. He's on the trade block, and they want to get rid of him. So very interesting stuff here for the New York Rangers, and obviously Chris Drury. And this is also from Collins Newsday, who's been fantastic on Twitter as well. Great follow if you're a Rangers fan. And he says, I would presume they'll move on from Kakko. Very interesting. I mean, it does go to, if you look at a couple quotes from Chris Johnson last week, it says Chris Drury is going to be cooking this offseason. Feels like the team, that's a team that could have a few tricks up its sleeve as we get into the draft window and trading free agency period. So obviously he wants to make a big splash, but if you go back a few weeks, it sounded like he wanted to keep Kakko and a lot of these guys, but it looks like now he's, wants to make a big splash. He doesn't really want to run it back. So some conflicting reports. It's very interesting going on right now. So let me know what you think as a Rangers fan. And again, per source, still strongly think that Kakko gets traded before July 1st. So obviously at the draft this weekend, it's probably going to happen. I'm sticking to it. He's on the block. It's best for both parties. New York Rangers want cap space, and Kakko wants to play in a top 6 during an important contract year. Kakko will have some trade value. Teams want him, and I tend to agree with that. I think some teams would want Kakko, like I said, maybe a younger team, a rebuilding team, a team where he can have an opportunity to play in their top 6, because right now I'm not sure that's the case with the Rangers, even though they were talking about it. The coach and the GM, that he needs to play higher up in the lineup with more skilled players to put up more points, but he hasn't earned that, so he's been in the bottom 6. So it's just a cycle. It goes on and on. So maybe it's best for both parties if they move on from this player. And again, from Phil, say what you want about the thinking behind moving up in the draft, but if the New York Rangers are set on doing this, it means they're absolutely shopping for right wings via trade or free agency, which means this could be this could be the first domino. You move on from Kakko, things could be set in motion to get a top line right wing. So very, very interesting. And, we'll take a look at Kaapo Kakko's stats too, because we talked about him ad nauseum the last couple of weeks. And again, not a great season. He played 61 games this year. He only had 19 points. He, doesn't play a lot of minutes. So you have to wonder, is it time? Is it best for both parties? He's still relatively young, but he is getting up into that like 24, 25-year-old range where you hope that these stars kind of develop, right? And it just hasn't happened. And I brought up a couple weeks ago, I wonder if Artemi Panarin is a good fit. Again, pretty young, only 23, had a disappointing season. He's a great goal scorer, great shooter. He likes to play the right side too, and just had a disappointing year in LA. And I think there's still a lot of potential there. So I wonder if he could be a good fit in return for Kaapo Kakko. But I think Kaapo Kakko still has a lot of value for some teams. I think if you put him on the trade block, you're going to get quite good value for a player like that. So very interesting. I wanted to pivot a little bit too. I mentioned last week or in previous videos that the Rangers have a hard time developing young players, and it's come to light again, right? There's a report that Lias Andersson is leaving North America. He's going overseas to play, and it just didn't work out. So another first round pick for the Rangers that did not work out, did not develop, did not end up making the NHL at a high level, did play some games here and there, but he's heading overseas now, and that's it for, or presumably it for his North American career. So again, like I mentioned, the Rangers have a hard time developing first round talent, and it looks like it might be happening again with Kaapo Kakko as they look to potentially move off of him at this year's NHL draft, because again, in other reports, it looks like they will be moving on from him before July 1st. So going to be very interesting. It's going to be a very, very interesting weekend for the New York Rangers at the draft. Lots of people seem to believe, and reports saying that they will move on from this player. So let me know in the comments what you think. Do they finally move on from this player? Is it best for both parties? What do you want to see that first round pick go out the door for him? What do you want in return for him? I brought up Kaliev, but that's more of a straight up deal. If you add the first round pick, there's a lot more value there. So going to be very interesting this weekend for the New York Rangers. But let me know in the comments what you think. Should they move on from this player? Should they not move on from this player? What's on your wish list? Is it a top line right wing? I think it should be. Let me know in the comments. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.